she's staring at.
Mattel Electronics presents B-17 Bomber.
B-17 Bomber.
B-17 Bomber.
Okay, be honest. This is the only thing most of you folks associate with this game. And why not? It's a funny clip. But once you get past the Southern Drawl opening, you'll find a game that has more to it than just a cheeky intro. Released in 1982 for the Intellivision system and one of the few games to make use of the Intellivoice voice synthesis module, B-17 Bomber has you piloting the eponymous bomber craft over war-torn Europe circa 1942, where you are charged with bombing enemy ground installations and warships, as well as eliminating any enemy aircraft that might impede your campaign. So you pick a level of difficulty via the number pad, which determines your skill setting, as well as the number of bombs in your loadout. You'll start on this map where you'll use the cursor to pick out potential targets. From here you can access many functions. Your pilot to fly your bomber, your 4 gun turrets used to fend off any enemy aircraft that might come your way, your gauges to keep track of speed, altitude, pitch, and remaining bombs and fuels, your scorecard, and of course the bomb bay where you're overlooking ground targets for you to bomb. Naturally, the goal is to take out as many targets as possible and eventually make your way back to England before you run out of fuel. As you're flying, you'll receive vocal warnings of bandits coming your way, require you to take control of your guns to try and shoot them down before they shoot you. If a bandit manages to hit your gunner, that gun is out of commission until you return to home base. B-17 Bomber is not a pick-up-and-play affair. There's a bit of a learning curve in figuring out all the intricacies and features you have at your disposal, and this is one of the few games where having the instructions and especially the controller overlay is almost vital to the experience, for without these you'll be left confused as to what does what. Every mission you undertake requires planning your attack with care, as you need to do what needs to be done while also making your way back home before your fuel runs out, and once that's all gone, it's game over. Manage your speed carefully because that also affects fuel consumption. Use the map to keep track of your craft's current position, and once you're on target, switch to the bomb bay and use the cursor to aim and deploy your bombs in hopes of a successful hit. The only thing that B-17 Bomber doesn't require you to do is manually land a plane. Once you're hovering over English soil, you're automatically landed and docked. And that's not a bad thing, that's a good thing, because try to imagine attempting to land a plane on Intellivision with this controller. Ass! Probably wouldn't be enough to convey how dreadful that experience would have been. And that is exactly the word I would not use to describe B-17 Bomber, because it is anything but dreadful. On the contrary, this is a surprisingly thoughtful and competently executed experience that manages to produce a flight simulator-esque experience on the Intellivision. It's not quite as intricately detailed as anything you'd find on home computer platforms, nor is it quite as realistic. I mean, look at this, please. But still better than Atari's console attempts at the genre. You've got different things to keep track of, different screens and viewpoints to check out, resource management and some strategic planning involved in successfully completing your campaign and winning the war for jolly old British, because not everything revolves around America, you bloody wankers. Learning how all this works and how to approach missions is not an on-the-fly experience. It takes a while to get a fundamental handle of things, but once you do, that's where B-17 Bomber becomes a pleasant experience. The game boasts multiple levels of difficulty, which affects the ordnance of your bomber as well as the overall strength of the enemy forces. There's enough variation here that you'll find a comfortable enough level to make your runs enjoyable, and perhaps build up enough confidence to tackle the tougher levels later on. Control in B-17 Bomber isn't perfect, we're still using those Intellivision controllers after all, but they do function for the purpose they serve. The targeting cursor and the gunner segments have a bit of a slippery feel to it, and shots don't always land when they should, but otherwise, it's fairly manageable once you start getting the hang of things, which again is going to take a while. B-17 Bomber maintains a somewhat basic looking visual presentation, but there are some aspects that are well done, such as the map of Europe being well rendered with all your targets clearly marked. The pilot and gunner point of view screens are very simplistic blue sky over darker blue water or green grass depending on the terrain, and transition from land to sea and vice versa is often represented by a none too graceful hard cut. The bomb bay has you overlooking the terrain you're flying over, with transitions from land to sea and vice versa being much more natural than the first-person views. Still, given everything that B-17 offers, it's not a bad-looking game by hardware standards, at the very least. B-17 Bomber is one of the few Intellivision games to make use of the Intellivoice voice synthesis module, and you get vocal cues on where bogeys are coming from, allowing you to man the appropriate guns. You'll also get compliments for your fine shooting or bombing skills, as well as chastised for bombing any Brits, which you also get penalized for. The voiceover is naturally primitive sounding and not quite British enough, but regardless, it does a fine job of enhancing the experience, and these vocal cues are your only indications of incoming attacks, so be sure to have that volume dial on the module set all the way up. Otherwise, you just have the subtle background noises of engine hums that vary according to speed, and also the occasional flak and explosion sounds, which are, well, they exist, they're fairly stock sounding, but they're not particularly offensive, so yeah. B-17 Bomber may be better known these days by some folks for, well,
B-17 Bomber.
but goddammit, there's a great fucking game behind that intro. A finely crafted game with plenty of moving bits going for it, all coming together to form a wonderful flight sim type of experience. There's a bit of a learning curve in learning how everything works and how to approach things. Once you get past that hurdle, B-17 Bomber is a real treat. Often considered to be one of the highlights of the Intellivision library, and I'm inclined to agree. I enjoyed this one immensely, and this could very well be my favorite game on the Intellivision, for whatever that's worth, so yeah. B-17 Bomber. Great game, fun times, bombs away. Good night.
Bombs away. That was on target. Check on inside.